Hello, welcome everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. This is Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after another Winnipeg Jets show. And I'm glad to see that our chat room is trying to stay positive here. There's a couple of Lynn Reimer says, well, at least the Jays are on a winning streak, so there's that. And Wrench Doozer going deep says the Bombers haven't lost a game in a year, and Team Canada undefeated in the under 18 World Championships. Let's not talk about our Buffalo girls at the World Championships in curling right now. But yeah, Lynn Reimer again, Bombers defending Grey Cup champs since 2016, finding the positives. Yeah, I love it. I love that everyone's finding the positives because it's getting harder and harder to find the positives in this situation. Kenny, it's no fun doing this, or it's not as much fun doing it when there's a losing streak of this magnitude going on. It started out, and I think you felt like we were going to be handling this situation for a game. I was thinking around 4, maybe 5. That's as far as it would go tonight. I thought after the Jets came back and tied up that game, it had looked like the Senators had abandoned any chances of scoring and were just going to try and hold on to that lead. Lost the lead. I thought, well, it's one of those things where when you stop going forward, you're on your heels. Thought the Jets were positioned well. All of a sudden, goal. And now 7 straight losses. Ken, I've been looking around here. I don't see a panic button around here, but if there was one, is it time to hit it?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, Sean. I think that, again, there were obviously the power play was not good enough. When a team goes 0 for 6 and gives up a shorthanded goal and loses by 1, I mean, that's not good enough. There's no doubt about that, Jeff Johnson. But in terms of how the Jets played overall, I mean, hey, 5-on-5, they owned the play. They wildly outshot the Senators in the second period, but no finish around the net. I mean, again, people will accuse me of rose-colored glasses here, but let's get real. I mean, if the Jets play like that enough down the stretch, that's a formula for them outside of the special teams. So again, lots to still sort out and get better at. I think too. I mean, obviously that was a strange circumstance. I think it must have been on an overlapping shift. Again, talking about Forbort and Stanley, I think that DeMello probably was a guy the Jets were trying to get out on the ice in that situation. Overall, Logan Stanley was pretty steady in this game for the most part. I thought, was physical, but that's a puck that has to get out. I mean, Logan Stanley, we've talked about him a lot. I mean, he's taken some great strides this year, but at worst, that puck has to be iced, and then a team takes its chances. Again, of course, it's some element of bad luck that it hits a person's skate, but that play has got to be made. That play has got to be out. That's got to be off the boards and out. And again, that wasn't the only reason the Jets had a chance to, another chance to probably either clear it or at least get containment on the play. And there you go, slapper from the point through traffic, bar down. I don't think Laurent Brossoit saw it. That's a play that's got to be stopped. I mean, the Jets know, you get down to 73 seconds left. That team needs to find a way to at least get 1 point. But they were unable to do so. So, I mean,
I wonder if this is exactly so. We've belabored the point of that 6th defenseman, right, and who they were going to bring in that spot. And clearly, at the beginning of the year, it's almost hard to remember Nate Beaulieu, who's been out so long, that what a massive issue that was, and how fans wanted him out of the lineup and to try someone new in there. And hey, I'm not gonna push that off on the fans. You know me, right at the beginning of the year, I was saying that I thought that they should be moving Nate Beaulieu and trying some of their younger players. But is this tonight not a perfect example of the reason why Paul Maurice has gone the way he's gone this year, with the veteran players in the lineup, not necessarily going with the younger guys? Is it because Logan Stanley looked really good in there at points tonight, but it's that play that cost him the game? And I've said this time and time again, Jordy Ben came into the lineup, and I think what he showed in that time was exactly what you would have expected from Jordy Ben. And so the consistency that you get out of a veteran versus the up and down play that you get out of a rookie or a younger player? Is that not what we saw in full display here, and why, or may explain some of Paul Maurice's decisions, especially with that sixth defenseman this year?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think Logan Stanley, that's was just a tough ending. I mean, again, the only thing that would have been more Jets-like in this slump, I guess, Sean, is if the puck would have gone off the skate and straight into the net in the top shelf. I mean, that's where it goes. I mean, again, it just wasn't very well played all around on that play, and I think that, again, Forbort has had some issues. Troy, I mean, there's mistakes that get made, but that's the one that ends up in the back of the net, Troy Stevens. I mean, that play's got to get out. I mean, again, I'm not dumping on Logan Stanley. Again, I think that he had a steady game, but that's a young player's mistake, a rookie mistake, if you will. And I mean, these things happen. I mean, the Jets' defense as a whole, they didn't give up a whole lot, but the things that they are giving up right now seems to end up in the back of the net right now.
Yeah, I'm not trying to totally pin this on Logan Stanley. I thought, like I'm saying, I thought he had a good game. I thought he brought something that the Jets have been missing. We're going to bring in Jeff, the Hammer Hamilton, into the show here. Great to see you, Jeff. Guys. Thanks for doing this.
Set this up. Make sure it's closer.
You're looking good. You're looking good, buddy. Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Better than the Jets, that's for sure. I didn't catch what you guys talked about earlier in the game. I was doing my M&M mum spaghetti in the mirror before I came on the show. So, I mean, wow. Here we are, 7 games. That's a ugly number.
Yeah. I don't know why Tony Teixeira has taken offense to what I said here. I'm the guy who said at the beginning of the year I didn't think Beaulieu should be in the lineup. He's getting lines crossed here. But I guess, Hammy, if you wanted to, I think you were in the green room long enough to hear the question that I asked Ken last time here, just about, I mean, the reasoning behind, and I'm not defending it. I'm suggesting this tonight may be an exact example of why Paul Maurice has made the decisions that he's made throughout the lineup on the fourth line and down into, back when he had Nate Beaulieu, who, again, Tony, I've been a guy saying I would have liked to have seen other guys given opportunities. But is Paul Maurice at this stage with this team in a position where he just wants guys, he knows exactly what he's going to get from them? A veteran's going to give you this, whether the ceiling is high or low. He knows what he'll get versus, up and down play of a rookie.
See, I look at it 2 different ways. I think you have to identify his instincts, right? His instincts is to lean veteran. So I think that's where he'd go. But at this point, I still think he's experimenting. I don't think he has an idea or knows. I still think he's using these last bits of games to figure out exactly what he has. He's obviously used, and where I think those intercross was Jamie Benn, or Jordy Benn, sorry. He is not, I mean, he came out, or, he hasn't impressed, but it didn't take him a long time, or he got, a long leash there. And the fact is that he did that because they weren't going to trade for a veteran and not give him an opportunity. I didn't think Logan Stanley deserved to come out. And I think it was evident as in those games, and that's where Maurice leans more towards the veteran. But I think if you look now, I still think he's going to use every game he has to figure out who he wants, and I don't know if he has cemented that lineup for the playoffs yet.
I mean, it's still open. The competition is still open. I mean, right? I mean, that's how I see it.
Wide open.
Why is this team doesn't have this figured out by this point? Here's another. I'm going to go in a different direction here. Ken, I really want to talk with you about this. I don't think I brought it up with you on the phone other than this, but all year they've been juggling the lines, right? And why were they juggling the lines? Because they wanted to find chemistry with lines to go to in case of emergency. And so what happens, we get into the middle of this losing streak. And I think, I thought tonight, I'm not the biggest fan of that Connor Scheifele Wheeler line, but at least it was stability. The thing I didn't get was, isn't this very moment supposed to be what juggling the lines was for all year, so that you had built-in chemistry in different spots to go to jump back on? And if that's the case, why did we not see lines until tonight? Why did we not see lines from this team that were lines that we'd seen in the past?
Well, I mean, that was the whole point of the experimenting, trying other things. And the problem was that they just didn't land on anything that really worked, right? I mean, the line that you've liked the best is Kopp, Stastny, and Ehlers, and that line's not available to them. And right now, none of the other options have really panned out right now. So, I mean, again, right? I mean, you can't get back those other games. The 51 games, now they're in the books. You're not going to be able to go back to game 10 and try something else. So
okay, but
well, no, I know what you're coming from. I'm not arguing with you.
If nothing worked for the longest time, then why didn't they go back to something? Why did they keep spinning the wheel?
I don't think they know where they're going back to. I think the loss of Nick Ehlers throws a massive wrench in the chemistry.
Huge.
So it's like
Huge.
they were already like, you had the play of Connor Hellebuyck that was masking a lot of the issues. You had the play of Nick Ehlers, who in my opinion is the only game changer on this team at this point. And when you have guys, not producing, I mean, look who's scoring the goals. Trevor Lewis scored twice last game. He had the best opportunity tonight. So who's doing anything? Kyle Connor hasn't scored in 5 games now. So, it's to me, it's the chemistry isn't there when you have, I mean, we're seeing just how thin the depth is here, in my opinion, up front. Like, I mean, they're back to this situation that if they get into the first round here and apparently one guy goes down, they can't play. Like, I haven't seen any style. Like, you talk about chemistry, you talk about those pairs. I mean, what style of game are they playing? They're not an inspired style. The teams they're playing against, even Ottawa, like they play more of a reckless game, and they just did it better than the Jets tonight. Even though that there were long stretches that they didn't have shots, I still didn't think, I don't know. I wanted to get into this kind of early, but how does Paul Maurice call it a hell of a game? Like, is it a hell of a game based on this last 7 games? Because I would agree with that statement. But how do you?
I do think that's the statement.
How is it a hell of a game? They haven't played a hell of a game in a month.
Well, you and I talked about this. We were texting back and forth, and I just think the team is so fragile right now that Paul Maurice can't be introducing negatives. So you grounded out against probably the worst team in the division. Couldn't get anything done with the extra man for the evening. Get scored shorthanded goal. Any other night, there's not a lot of positives to look at on that evening, but there's just no room for them focusing on the negative at this point. And I wanted to bring this up. Troy Stevens says, Pomo's floundering. Why can't you guys see that? Troy, pay attention. We're talking the entire time about him not being able to find lines that are working. We're talking about the coach and what he's needed to do so far this year. But I mean, it is a good point. It's a good point, Jeff. I just think I wonder what ripping a ripping from the head coach by the Winnipeg Jets would do to this team right now. Someone had asked earlier in the chat room if Paul Maurice has lost the team. If he did that at this stage, I think that he would lose the team. I think right now he's calling for camaraderie. He's calling for guys to stick together. He's saying, guys, the only way out of this is for us to stick together and all hold hands and walk down this road together. And he's right. That's right. Anyone who's played hockey before knows that if you start sniping at each other and start entirely falling apart, but it's not that simple. It's not as simple as let's just stick together. They got to start finding some things that work and, finding lines that work and combinations that work and finding, the stability that most teams should have at this time of year would be a good start. Don't you think, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, I know the angst level is picking up here. I totally understand. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, right? I mean, we know that coaches can't always have truth serum, right? And Sean, we talked about this before. Paul Maurice did what people had been calling him to do for a couple of years, and how has that turned out so far? Not really well. So, again, is he going to go out and rip? He's going to rip his team after they gave up 4 shots in the second period? I mean, I just don't really. You can ask for more. Of course, ask for more. Special teams didn't get the job done. There's no doubt about that. They gave up a shorthanded goal and couldn't score in the power play. I mean, I think what we've talked about in terms of lines and other things. I mean, I'd like to see Jansen Harkins move out. I think Jansen Harkins has been skating well, and right now Matthew Perreault's had a great bounce back year. Right now Matthew Perreault is struggling. I mean, And this has nothing to do with, he got cross-checked in the face, and it was a coincidental minor. Sean, you made a great kind of joke about, Pro doing a nice job to get up the open ice. He got cross-checked in the mouth, was bleeding profusely, and it was an even up coincidental minor penalty. I mean, come on.
Well, but the last thing you see of the camera is him initiating it.
Oh, he
right?
definitely initiated for sure. But if someone cross-checks you in the face and you're bleeding, that's high sticking. It's not roughing.
I think he got a couple fists to the face too there.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. And again, this is Jansen Harkins on the second line on the interim basis until Ehlers is back. That doesn't solve the Jets' problem either. But it would probably help, though.
We need to go back to Maurice. So, Sean,
your
point on that was I wasn't expecting Paul Maurice to come out and rag his team. Like I don't think this is time for it's time for the head coach to be looking in the mirror, not to be blasting his players. And Maurice has never had that power, I would go as far as to say, over this team. His power has been his ability to relate to them and try to be more like, be aggressive when he has to be aggressive, but overall, kind of show that respect. It's not that I'm questioning. It's questioning his position, and credit to Scott Billick about asking about the Heat tonight. Because
let's get to that.
The reality is that he probably doesn't have any heat, right? I mean, the Jets can't lose out. And then if they lose in the first round, I think that would have to force someone like Mark Chipman to make that decision. But I think this guy has a long leash. The question is he going to be a better coach? Because the reality is like, you got one wrench of a player? Like, teams get through the loss of 1-2 good players. You see it all the time. And it'd be one thing if the special teams was going. Both special teams are essentially trash right now. And if you look at the actual style and play, like, look at Edmonton. They might be the best looking team in the division. They got better. The Jets don't create anything. There's no transition. Obviously, that has to do with their defense, but everything is a mess. Like, what can you point to and say that, like, this is a team that you're convinced can do anything in the playoffs, or maybe even anything in these next 5 games?
Yeah, so quick one for me, Jeff, on that. So again, we got the lost the room whole idea and angle popping up here again. If Paul Maurice had lost the room, then they would have been blown out in all these games. They wouldn't have been committed defensively. Where today, they didn't give up much today. So I don't buy that.
Well, I never suggested.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying people in the chat room here. It's not you.
It's a conversation.
And hey, people are asking.
This is fair game.
This is why I'm saying that if he had lost the room, then you would not see any pushback. So again, I'm not painting a rosy picture here. And to be honest, Jeff, I think you agree. I think Paul Maurice handled that question pretty solidly. I mean, what's he going to say? Yes, I'm scared I'm going to be fired in the morning. No, but I think he said all the right things within that while remaining calm.
He looked a little shook. I think he didn't I think he was comfortable in saying it, but I think he was very careful in what he said, right? You don't want to come out and be too confident in that thing, but you also don't want to be looking weak, right? So I do think he straddled that line, but I think it's a good question to ask nonetheless.
What I'm saying, though, he didn't look like... We've seen coaches at the podium in a game before they get fired. He did not look like a dead man walking to me.
Well, that's my point. I'm saying he doesn't... I have no... My opinion is he has a long leash. He is not getting fired. In fact, he'd have to lose out this season and then lose out in the playoffs to force, Mark Chipman's hand. We know how close these guys are at the top. This is a group that's going to do it together, much like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have done it, right? Like, it's a crew that it's going to take a lot for them to shake it up. And I'm not, again, that's just stating what is true, is not an opinion on that matter. I think he should have a bit more heat, not based on his relationship with the team and the ownership, but his execution of his players. Nothing is working. Nothing looks good. They don't look like the team anyone thought they were 2 weeks ago, and that's troubling at this point of the season. That's all I'm saying, which,
Sean, and I don't want to interrupt here, but Jeff, you're a great person to ask this. I would hearken back to it was either 17 or 18. How many people wanted Mike O'Shea fired after they lost to the BC Lions that year? I remember lots of fans being upset. After
absolutely,
that, right?
Absolutely.
And what happened? They stuck with him, and then they won the Grey Cup, right? I mean,
Right, but Ken, it got better, and then it got better, and then it got better. It's getting worse and worse and worse. It's gone the opposite way, and he's had that time. He came in and got a whole new look. He's had new coaches. He's had draft picks come in. Look, I'm not even what I'm essentially saying here is not opinioning. It doesn't matter if I think Paul Maurice should be gone or not. I don't make the decision. And yes, everybody wanted Mike O'Shea fired, but everybody knew he was building towards something. What can you point to in the Jets game right now and suggest they're building to anything? They're getting worse and worse and worse. And every year, it's kind of like a different but same excuse. The schedule's too busy. This is what happened in the playoffs. Like, these at the end of the day, like some got like this is the year. Like Mason Appleton, way better. Matthew Perreault, way better. You have guys that are Nikolai Ehlers taking his game to a whole new level. Like where's Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele? Like these guys are falling apart. Like these guys, when I say falling apart, I mean falling out of the trajectory that everyone was predicting them to be if the Winnipeg Jets were going to be a Stanley Cup contender. They're not in that conversation anymore, and there's nothing to suggest that they're headed that direction, and the leadership of it is Paul Maurice. We all like Paul Maurice because of his quotes, but if he's going to sit there and say, we had a hell of a game in game 7 of a 7-game losing streak and not own that and say, I put this on me with that leash that he has, tells me that he's preaching something to his players and it's a bit nonsense. And I think it needs to get called out.
So what's the alternative, Hammer? If the
I don't
Senators
think there's an alternative.
Hold on. I'm just saying, because this is the thing that I find interesting about this, and I'd said this to Ken, this statement before, and I'll say it to you. Paul Maurice took a team that I think didn't have a defense core that was one that we expected they would be able to compete with, right? And one that I think we all thought that they were going to address at the trade deadline. That didn't happen, but we've got a team that's deep up front, or is supposed to be on paper, is supposed to be deep on front. They're sure not showing it right now. A goaltender who can bail you out of games, and a defense that we all thought, I think to a man, there's no one here who thought, there you go, that's a Stanley Cup championship defense, right? So they take that team and 7 days ago are competing for first place with the Toronto Maple Leafs and are a 2-game series away from potentially being first in the North Division in a season where the Toronto Maple Leafs, adjusted to the amount of games they had, are having one of the best seasons in franchise history, in a 100-year history of that team. 7 games ago, that's where they were. And now everything's fallen off the rails. So I hear what you're talking about. I hear you're saying guys are heading in the wrong direction. But before that, Mark Scheifele was around 5th in scoring and looking very much like a guy who'd taken another step. Blake Wheeler, it's a different story. He's 34. I don't think that we should be able to expect from a 34-year-old that a guy is going to keep getting better and better and better. It was crazy that he did it when he was 30 years old, right? So I think we can guess that the age adjustment is going to happen there. Nick Ehlers is hitting another level. Kyle Connor was producing points and going to end up with, on a pace for 25 goals in a shortened season. So things looked really good 7 games ago. So the question I ask, and especially to people who are saying, Maurice has lost the room. And believe me, I've got, and anyone who's listened to this show has heard me question a lot of the decisions that are made, especially player deployment, especially certain players. I think that he alters his lineup around to get them to succeed and takes momentum away from players who are already succeeding. But I guess I say this, if they were in that spot and looking that good 7 days ago, and like that, he lost the room, does it say more about Paul Maurice, or does it say more about the players that tuned him out when they were in a race for first place?
Well, I'm saying, I'm not saying he has lost the room. But if you're asking me that question hypothetically, I think it says a lot about the players, and that's kind of my point. Is that the culture that's been able to fester in that room? I mean, if that's the issue, where nobody can seem to rise to the occasion. And I see some comments on here about Blake Wheeler and whether or not he should be on the top line. I think that's legit. I think Sean, it's easy to say 7 days. It was more like 14 days ago.
7 games.
7 games. Sorry, 7 games ago. Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, yeah, things look pretty good. I'm still wondering when all this kind of stuff figures out with COVID and we go back to normal, just determining how good this North Division is. Because, like to me, the bottom end teams have been garbage this year. And see, like I don't get these comments. I'm not panicking. I could care less if the Jets I like the storyline. But it's
part of it.
And the reality is, no, I'm just...
Hang on a second. Wake up, commenter. Jeff does not care about that. Let's go. Let's go.
No, but I understand the panic because you're right. I'm not painting a great picture, and I haven't seen anything that suggests it. But I think this does land on the leadership group or the older players and stuff. I think there's a lot of guys who have been given the the long leash from Maurice and whatever and have not paid out. Like, guys, I really do think it's not a lot of fun right now, and this is the kind of adversity they haven't gone through. You guys talked about it last show. I think Murad brought it up actually at the time was that yes, this team hadn't lost 2 games in a row, but they weren't winning a bunch of games either. And I think, when you talk about before that, like Sean, it was either a massive shootout and the Jets just outskilled the team, right? Or Connor Hellebuyck stole the game. That was the recipe. There was no complete games. Like, we kept looking at that game was like, that the best game based on the score or based on their play? Like, and so now we're seeing like, and you can compare it at different stages. Early in the season, it's kind of even. When everyone has the tape on you as often as they do now, because let's face it, this is a fascinating season because you're playing a team 9-10 times a game, right? So they get to know everything about you. And the fact that you don't have any answers means you're the most predictable team in the league. And if you're falling apart now, then that's because everybody has lapped you and you're still playing catch up if you're putting on nearing a double-digit losing streak. If you're closer to a double-digit losing streak at this point, everyone has your number. And I don't think there's a single opponent that looks good for you in the playoffs.
Kenny, I know you're going to come back on this. I just wanted to say something to add to Jeff's point. I can tell you one thing I never liked. It never sat right with me throughout the early part of the season was the whole Jets stay in the fight line, right? That's how they used to explain those games where they didn't show up and then they'd pull it out of the fire at the end of the game, or they'd hang around because Connor Hellebuyck kept them in the game. The whole stay in the fight. I think that right there is the crux of this, is that there's times where the signs that you are talking about were evident, and instead of addressing those things, they kind of pawned it off as a pat on the back, right? Like early in the season when they were pulling out games against the Senators, who weren't a very good team early in the season and didn't have anywhere near, the leadership and the experience that team had, they'd be down on that team, pull out a victory at the end and pat themselves on the back and say, we stayed in the fight and we got there, right? And that's to the point that you're making. I do feel like there's a tendency on this team sometimes to be too impressed with themselves when they do things to pull it out of the fire, rather than take a look and say, why are we constantly having to pull things out of the fire? Ken?
I understand what you're saying, Sean. We've all played sports. I totally know what you're saying. I don't think the Jets were out there saying, hey, this is our best. But finding a way to lose when you are not at your best is part of sports. That's what good teams do. They find a way to win when they are not operating at their best. However, they also find a way to, lose. The Jets' problem is that they've found found ways to lose games that they were in or should have won. I think of the late goal by Brady Tkachuk in that game against Ottawa early in the year here, where Hellebuyck kind of he wanted to go play it and they got stuck outside the area behind the net where he can't play it, goes up top, it's in the back of the net. I mean, that's a game that has to get to overtime. Today, that game has to get to overtime. If you have to ice it 5 times, that's okay. That game has to get to overtime if you're a very good team, right? When things aren't going well, things pile up. I totally get it. And I'm with you. I mean, people at the start of the year, I don't think they were saying, this is the Jets' template to win. I mean, they did it against Toronto at the end of a road trip 2 different times, but overall, they haven't had that enough times. You're 100% right. The Jets, you're right, Sean. The Jets have not shown their best often enough, which was the crux of our discussion about why the Jets are struggling to find a top six that works. They haven't done it enough. One line carries them, and then the third line plays well, but the other line doesn't go. And now when they're, their most productive forward, given the minutes that he plays, Nikolai Ehlers is out. Now the Jets are having trouble. They look like they're missing in action. I mean, there were a couple chances for Kyle Connor today, which was different than the last two games when he had no shots. But their top end guys are gripping the stick tightly, and some of the other guys that were going earlier are having trouble finding it. Like Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, he had a great chance on the power play early, but then got frustrated and took a penalty that he can't take. I mean, when a team has 4 or 5 power plays, the refs are looking to even it up, right? I mean, you can't take that penalty there. And he knows better. Josh Morrissey had a great game, 9 shots on goal or 10, whatever he finished with. But that slashing penalty on Connor Brown, you can't take that penalty. He's not in a dangerous scoring area. You can't slash his hands there.
Yeah,
that's just we're talking about frustration.
That gets called 100 times out of 100 times too.
And he doesn't want to do it. I'm not out here saying that's it's just something that when you're frustrated, things happen. I mean, it's just like I got into a discussion on DM with someone. How does Morrissey miss that backdoor tap in? Have you ever been hooked under the arm when you're trying to go with an off angle one timer at full speed? Yeah. That play is tough to convert when there's nobody tugging your arm right when you go to shoot. I mean. But again, when it's going well, that goes in, right?
That's what I was gonna say. I think that's one of those ones, Ken, where he gets a hold of it and everyone's squeezing the stick so tight. Like the angle that he throws it back at the net, it's almost like he's just trying to get it on net. He's not trying to.
No, it's because of the tug, though, Sean. He roofs that unless the guy tugs his arm right as he's shooting. That's my opinion.
Okay. Here, I'm just going to take a quick detour here. Winnipeg Jets 2080 says, Sean didn't wear his headband. Now I know why
this guy lost. Obviously wasn't watching the pregame show.
I wore the headband. It's right here. I wore it on the pregame show because there was a whole bunch of viewers who were saying that I was jinxing the team by not wearing it. So I busted it out. And when they tied it up, I thought, man, I'm never going to be able to take this headband off ever again after that. But turned out didn't work that way. Waiters 27 here. Go on.
I want to steal hosting job right now and ask you guys a question.
Go for it.
Okay, so we're 51 games into a 56-game season, and we've heard the Jets say over and over and over again about going back to their game, that they need to be playing their game. 51 games into this regular season, can either of you explain to me what the Jets' game is? Like, what would be an expectation of the Jets game?
I think there was a pattern of the Jets game, and
but they're not
around
heavy.
the middle of the season.
They're not. Well,
I think they had a real good forecheck. So they're a team that and
Connor Hellebuyck said they were heavy the other day.
Yeah, well,
they're a heavy team, and that's like, no, you're not heavy. They're not a heavy team. He can take that.
He can. I mean, they can have that opinion.
Wait. The question stands. I'm hosting. Sorry, so I'll shut up and let you guys answer.
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. When you do host, after you ask the question, that's when you shut up and let the other guys take it.
Push. Well, no, it's time for a timeout, Hammer. Time for a timeout.
He had good points. I think got to your head, so I was just kind of nailing it in the head before you went on.
Listen, I can mute you at any second. You are that close. You're that close.
Your Honor, asked, answered. Okay, go ahead.
I think there was a point around the middle of the season where they had their forecheck going. I remember at the beginning of the year, and I say that because I brought this up. I'd asked Paul Maurice at the beginning of the year of that 2018 team, and when they worked really well, they just bottled you up in your own zone and didn't let you out. And you basically, I always said this about the Jets. When their game was on, you would see the opposition very often in a game grab the puck and flip it to center ice. They'd either ice it or they'd be flipping it to center ice. You'll remember this if you watch a lot of Jets games. And that meant that there was just no way out of the zone. And you were starting to see that happen at about the midpoint of the season here. They were getting their forecheck going. They were causing more chaos in the offensive zone. They weren't relying on Connor Hellebuyck as much. And I remembered being surprised because I didn't think that they had the personnel on D to be able to pull that off, because to pull it off, they have to be active. They have to bottle up the zone. And then your forwards have to be activating and jumping back to pick up the puck at the line, hold it in, and keep things going. So I think that's what they thought. That's what they were trying to pull off. My theory on this whole thing is since the beginning, and they said this in training camp, they've been trying to use the offense to spell off the defense, right? They needed to be bigger 200-foot players. And you talked about guys like Paul Stastny, who were going to come in and make a really big difference, and talk about Nate Thompson, who is going to make a really big difference because defensively they were going to help the defense down low and help get the puck out of the zone more often. I just think that everyone talks about playing a 200-foot game, but on teams that work really well, you're not asking, Nathan MacKinnon to be your most defensive player to spell off your defense. What you're doing is you're using a really great defenseman to get the puck up to those guys, hit them with speed, and get it going the other way.
But that's the thing. The Jets don't have the superstars for that. The Jets don't have the superstars for that.
Exactly. But what else do you do, Hammer? If you don't have a championship quality, first place quality defense core, what else can you do other than ask other people to pick up the slack? I just think we're at the stage where they got tired because they've been having to spell off and play defense first and make it down the ice. And everyone that I know, people out there are going to say, oh, well, all teams play defense. Yeah, right. But there's a lot of teams who have really good defense who make it really easy to transition out of the zone and free up the forwards. I don't think there's any freeing up the forwards on this team. I think there's defensive responsibility and then grinding out on the other end what you can offensively. And I think they're tired and mentally tired from it.
The other part, too, is that, so 2015, the Jets were a heavy team. 2018, they were hard to play against, but not because they ran you out of the building. They were hard to play against because, as you mentioned, Sean, their forecheck was ferocious, and the Jets pressured the opposition all over the ice, not just in the offensive zone where they could wear you down for a minute and 20 shift. They pressured you at the blue lines, and sure, they gave up some odd man rushes that year, but Hellebuck was a Vezina candidate. He could hold the fort, no big deal. Some folks are thinking that we're ignoring Paul Stastny's comments. We've talked about Paul Stastny's comments for 4 games already.
How refreshing were they? How refreshing was it to hear someone on the team actually acknowledge what we all talk about?
Yeah, no problem. I mean,
how good does it feel to tell us we're right? Finally, players admit it. First time ever.
The Jets were a team that they were hard on the puck. I wouldn't say that they were heavy. No, they weren't physical, but they made life difficult on their opponent, which is what they're not doing enough now. Secondly, this team is built on elite-level goaltending and highly skilled forwards. But right now, when those highly skilled forwards are not scoring, that takes away one of the most important parts of the Jets' identity is that ability to create offense. And further to Sean's point, when you're thinking about defense all the time, it sort of gets them away from what they're actually good at. I'm not saying the Jets should try to go run and gun 6-5 games with the Oilers, because that's going to get them an early exit also. But at the same time, I think there's so much concern about being better defensively that they're not doing. They've totally kind of not abandoned their offensive game, but they've kind of got away from their strengths. And then too, now you got the other part of it too. The Jets are a good rush team, but those backdoor taps get taken away at the playoffs. So they're sort of. You're right, Jeff. They're struggling to get back to their identity, and they're not really able to do that right now, and that makes it incredibly difficult. But
it's quite telling, though, Kenny, that that this offense that has been talked about for years as being among the best in the NHL can't generate when it matters against a division that's not all that incredible, and to not be able to do it against a team like, I'm sorry, but I get that, I get that Ottawa is gets to play spoiler and they're playing loose and they're fun or whatever. You're the desperate team who's trying to win a Stanley Cup this year and you're floundering in a 6-game losing streak. If you can't find it in that, and if a forward group can't take over in some capacity there, I mean, is it not telling that they need better defense to get those opportunities? Is it not telling that they can't generate anything really on 6? Go back to the game before that, like the blatant disregard of making admitting to mistakes. Like if you looked at that Edmonton game, those goals against, every single one was self-inflicted, and so
5 on the rush and 1 led on a rush chance. Yeah,
absolutely. And so at the end of the day, it's almost kind of like when does it stop being an excuse of not getting it done, and why can't they lean? If that's their identity, why can't they lean on a forward group at least once in 7 games to get a victory? And it was anyone. I had this, and maybe this is not fair, but I'm going to admit it popped into my mind today. Did anyone think the game might have been the Sens might have had a bigger win if it wasn't for Rousseau being in net?
Not really.
Oh,
no,
okay.
I thought the best goaltending was on the other end of this.
Okay.
Here, I'm gonna bring this point back because you're talking about them and leaning on the offense. Like Jeff, there was 3 players from the Jets in the top 25 in scoring. Right? You're saying that they're not getting it done.
I'm not
guys
saying,
were getting it done.
No. I'm saying in this 7-game losing streak, can you not rely on that offensive group to win you one of those games solely?
Okay,
like, if you're talking about
same question could be asked about Connor Hellebuck, who got pulled in 2 of those games. Like nothing's working right now.
Absolutely.
Nothing's working for anyone.
For sure. But I'm not disagreeing with that. We're talking about the forwards, and that's why I bring them up. You can say everything. You can say the goalie. You can say coaching, whatever. You're right. It's all broken, but we're focusing on the forwards, and there's a lot of talk about how good these forwards are and how, I've certainly, spilled ink. You have too, Kenny. We've all talked about it, about how great this forward group is. So, I'm pointing out to them they can't take over. That's what I'm saying against a team like Ottawa. Like, come on, man.
Well, we talked about this a lot. So, you got to put your stamp on the game. Again, on Saturday night, Nick Suzuki scored 2 goals when the game mattered in a game where Montreal was trying to put the heat on the Jets. The Jets, there you go, Sean. And also back to your point about 3 guys in the top 25. A lot of those points were power play points, and now the power play has gone dry, right? So there's still a top 5 power play, but the Jets have not been good enough with the man advantage. And then to rub salt in the wound, they gave up a shorthanded goal. That can't happen to a team that's desperate. See, one quick thing here, guys. Do you think that we've talked about trying to manufacture intensity or whatever, and even though we agree that it doesn't really matter if they play the Oilers or the Leafs, it's going to be tough regardless. Do you think that the Canadians pulling even in points with the Jets can create any type of or manufacture some sense of urgency that simply hasn't been there yet? No,
I don't. I think I did a intermission show with the Jets centric folks on Twitter. Sure. It was a neat little thing. And this is how I put it. This is how I can best describe it. The Jets are broken right now. They're broken. They're lying on the floor in shards. And the only way they put this back together is by painstakingly picking up each shard one at a time, gluing it together, and hoping that there's enough time for that glue to set before they hit the playoffs. And this is a good question by Harvey Minuk. If they break out of the slump, could they go on a heater? I'm just wondering at this stage. Okay, so theoretically,
I guess that's technically an option.
There's always a possibility, but let's tackle this from the idea of everything's a possibility. But at this stage, is there enough runway left for them to have a good enough feeling, or even compartmentalize and box out of their mind the frustration and the lack of confidence that they're feeling at this moment? Because I go back to that too. This is why that kind of stuff matters. And Paul Maurice tried to make it sound like he doesn't believe in momentum, and momentum is created with every drop of the puck. And it's a great thing to say, and it's something you probably have to say and convince your team of at this point. But I go back to that 2019 series when they started off on fire at the beginning of the season, fell apart at the second half of the season. I did their very last game of the year on Hockey Night in Canada down in Arizona, and I looked at them and I thought, this is not a team that's ready for the playoffs. And they went and lost the first 2 games to St. Louis, win the next 2, almost win the third, almost knock off the eventual champs, and then entirely fall apart in that 6th game. I think that series is a perfect example of how hard it is to pick yourself up once you've fallen from here. Because the Jets, I thought, they went in with no momentum. They lost the first 2 games because they were trying to build their game and find their game against a team who had it. Then they came back and win the next 2 games, and they're building, and they've got all the momentum in the series, all the momentum for the 3rd game. And then at the end, the game turns on them and they break. They lose that 3rd period, they lose that game, and they go back and they had nothing in St. Louis. And that's what a team with skill and capability looks like in the playoffs when the pressure when people start leaning on you, you break. And so I just look at this situation right now, and I think the Jets are fragile. Even if they can pull themselves out of this, they head into the playoffs fragile mentally, and any team worth its salt is going to try and apply pressure, and it should work. It should work against the Jets because they're just sunk too deep.
Well, one thing though, Sean, the team that knocked them out had been playing basically for their playoffs live since January 2nd that year. So neither the Oilers or the Leafs will be in that situation this time around. The Leafs basically have been first place from wire to wire. The Oilers have been red hot ever since they got their behinds kicked by the Maple Leafs. Again, I'm not out here saying the Jets are going to go on some crazy run, but I mean, we talked about it all year. When you have the great equalizer between the pipes, now again, it's all about Hellebuck showing it, but I mean, you can't tell me that the Jets are automatically going to lose. They got the best goalie one of the best goalies in the league. They could easily win a series. I mean, you talked about it yourself. As bad as the Jets stumbled down the stretch, they were basically a third period away from being up 3-2 on the Blues. And that's not to say they would have won the series or gone to the conference final, but the exhale that happens after a team that has been struggling can take after beating a team like that. I mean, that was the worst matchup for the Jets, right? If they had played Nashville, or even if they had, I mean, again, it would have been a tough series against, probably against the Stars, but that was the worst matchup for them, and it ended up costing them. Again, we also talked about it in the pregame show. The Leafs have this massive weight on them. They haven't won a single series since 2004. So all of a sudden, Connor Hellebuck, we've seen what he's done against the Leafs. Connor Hellebuck tosses out a shutout in game one. All of a sudden, what's the story like in Toronto? How crazy are people going if this team that wilted down the stretch suddenly wins the first game? Or I mean, just look at. I did get most of my steps in, just over 14,000. But thank you for asking.
You got it, Mark.
It has to be Hellebuck again. But you're right, Sean. The Jets have to clean up a lot of areas in order to have a chance to advance. But there's a lot of pressure on both the Oilers and the Leafs, and you can't discount that pressure.
Okay, I'm going to address it, Sean. I think they need to win out this season. So five games, to be feeling good about the playoffs. Sure, go into it like 5 games would be a tie a season high, right? That would be a season high. They got 5 before, did they not?
No, 4.
4. Okay, so it would be a season high. So that'd be a step in the right direction. I'll reiterate, I see nothing that would suggest that's going to even come close to happening. So I think what the reality is, and I don't care who you are, as you continue to find out exactly who your team is, what your identity is, all those things, if your kind of take going into the playoffs is, well, hey guys, it's the playoffs, it's a whole new season. That's not enough to get past hungry, determined teams that take it personally. When it comes to the playoffs, you hear that cheer. How personal do you take things? The Jets aren't taking anything personally. Because if they were taking things personally, you don't lose 7 games in a row. There's something broken with this team, and there's nothing about what we've seen in the last 2 weeks as we head into this playoffs that's going to suggest that they're going to be riding anything. And therefore, when you look at the playoffs, it doesn't look all that great. However, the playoffs, and I'm not contradicting myself here, but it is a new season. It is a new slate. I agree with you, Kenny. I think if you have a guy like Connor Hellebuck, if he can steal a series, I'm also skeptical because we haven't been able to see Hellebuck steal a game in the last while. So until he steals a game again, I don't think I'm all that confident that he's going to steal a series. So there's, again, nothing pointing to, special teams, 5-on-5, defense, forwards, goaltending, anything in this last while here that suggested that they're going to turn it around. And at this point, it's holding on and hopefully you taking some kind of silver lining out of whatever victories you can get here in the last 5. And then evaluating and focusing perhaps on Edmonton even earlier than the last regular season game, whoever your teammate or whoever your line is, and getting extra prepared on who you probably are going to play in the playoffs. But they'll have to figure that out here because there's tie at 3 right now.
How about, guys, and people keep bringing it up in the chat room here, the idea that are we giving too much credit to, and it sounds strange to say this about a Vezina Trophy winner and a guy who's stolen a lot of games, but are we giving too much credit for Connor Hellebuck to suggest that he can win series for the Jets in the playoffs? Because, I mean, I guess my question would be, have we seen him do that before? Have we seen Connor Hellebuyck steal a playoff series in his life?
I mean, he outplayed the Vezina Trophy winner in a 7-game series against the team that won the President's Trophy in 2018, right, in the second round. I mean, I would say that he was the better goalie in that series. There's no doubt about that.
Because the other goalie was terrible.
Well, again, but Renny also had 2 shutouts in the series.
Kenny, you outplayed him in the press box.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying one thing.
Won in 7 games. He was technically the winning goaltender, but I mean that was also back. Let's consider that series back in the day. At this point, I mean, Connor Hellebuyck has had the chance to steal a series the last couple of years, and they haven't been able to do it. So that just adds to the argument of not only is he not playing that great right now, but he doesn't really have a history of stealing series.
Yeah, I would just say that I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in the Calgary series COVID situation. The Jets were without 2 of their top 4 forwards, but you're right. And again, I said this at the time, and I'll say it now. Hellebuyck was the second best goalie in that series to Cam Talbot, not to Patrick Waugh, to Cam Talbot. The year before, I mean, Bennington played pretty solid. I mean, Bennington took their team to the Stanley Cup and won. So, and if it wasn't for Ryan O'Reilly, he would have been the MVP. So I don't think he got badly outplayed. And then the series before that, Marc-Andre Fleury basically ran at .960. So it wasn't that he was bad. It's just the other guy was better. But you're right. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck said it himself. He wants to, he won his one trophy. He wants the other one. So, but that also means he's going to have to outplay those goalies. But I don't think for 1 second that Connor Hellebuyck can't outplay Mike Smith or Jack Campbell.
Here's the other thing. I think Connor Hellebuyck can steal a series. He just needs to have his defensive forwards played better than they are to help him steal a series. He still needs, he still needs some support. He can't just get hung out to dry and steal them. He needs that. I just don't think he's getting even that play from the players around him to allow him to steal a series.
Right, and the Jets scored 4 or 5 goals in the entire series against Calgary last year.
Look at this. Look at these 7 games. They haven't been. This is another part. We can point at Helly, but look at the forwards. They're not putting the puck in, and the guys that are scoring are Trevor Lewis 2 goals last game, and today. I mean, I don't know.
But I mean, this is the suggestion that keeps being made. Like, we're saying, okay, he could have used more support, and he could have. The fact of the matter is Connor Hellebuyck, in my mind, has never gone out and won a series for his team. I mean, I take a look at the way the Jets played in that series against Nashville, and I think the Jets were the better team in that series, and that's why they won. And I think we could all say, like, Connor Hellebuyck played a role in the demise of the Winnipeg Jets against the Vegas Golden Knights. And someone had suggested here that Binnington had outdueled him, and I would agree with that statement as well. I mean, I guess all I'm saying is we talked so long about Nick Ehlers not getting it done in the playoffs. And yes, Nick Ehlers didn't go out and win a Hart Trophy to earn himself the free pass to say this guy can change a series, but Connor McDavid has won a Hart Trophy, and he gets questioned about, where he is in the playoffs when things aren't showing up. I don't think I think there's too many people saying, hey, we've got Connor Hellebuyck and we could steal our way through this thing. Well, you guys just said it. He didn't get enough support in those other series against Calgary, against those other teams, to get past those teams, to have a chance to steal the series. If you're in a situation where we're walking into this and we're saying, yeah, the Jets can do something, Connor Hellebuyck just has to steal, to your point, Jeff. He hasn't stolen much lately, but he's got to steal 4 games in a series. Again, it's a tall order. It's back to the whole Ville Heinola thing. Everyone wants Ville Heinola in the lineup to come in and fix the team as the 6th defenseman. It's too big an ask. I'm trying to think of examples of who was it with the Mighty Ducks back in the day. French Canadian goaltender
Jean-François Giguère.
Yeah. I mean, that guy literally stole a series. Like, what did he let? He allowed 2 goals in the entire series. Like, that guy stole a series. He went out and literally won a series for his team. But even in series where teams are winning based on good goaltending, still have a lot of the signs of a team showing up, timely scoring. Vegas showed the timely scoring angle in that series against the Jets when Fleury was an absolute god. But I mean, it takes, in almost every situation, it takes more than a goaltender stealing you that series. And I submit, I don't think we've seen that from Connor Hellebuyck yet in the playoffs. We saw a Vezina trophy season out of him. We saw another one where he was right there, but I don't think we've seen, Conn Smythe winning Connor Hellebuyck yet.
I can't believe we're almost 55 minutes in and we haven't even mentioned it. How come we're not talking about Connor Hellebuck's workload this year?
Ask Kenny, because Kenny's all over this.
Well, I asked Maurice this yesterday. I said, you have 41 starts, the most starts. I wrote it down on paper here. If I can even find it here, it's going to be a real treat for everybody. Oh, I did. It's right here. It doesn't go too far away from me. So I wrote this down when I asked the question, and we didn't get Hellebuyck because he was working out or something. And then Maurice, whatever, he gave an okay answer. But I said, so he's got the most starts of any goalie in the NHL. He's faced the most shots against. He has the most saves. Okay? So that just goes to workload, all right? He has the most goals against in any goalie. Okay? His save percentage is 22nd in the league for goalie, and his goals against average is 30th in the league for goalies with at least 15 starts. So you ask and he's been progressively really, really bad the last couple weeks. So when you ask the question, I asked Paul the question about, are you thinking about the workload here? And he comes back at me and says what he's always said before, that Hellebuyck would play in every single game, that there's a certain rhythm that he likes to get into. At what point have you not determined it? And maybe they have determined this, and they're just not saying it out loud based on Brossoit playing tonight. But at what point do you not look at it and go, maybe we're riding this guy a little bit too hard, and that we should not be giving him a bit of a break leading into the playoffs? And does that break actually be a benefit at this point, given his need for rhythm? I feel like they painted themselves into a corner here a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I had Hellebuyck for 42 to 44 starts this year. He's probably going to have 45, so I don't think it's an excessive, overload for him. And the other part too that I would say to everyone who's talking about the last 3 years, and it's valid. He's played a lot. We know that, but you've reduced the travel immensely with the baseball style schedule. So I don't think it's a massive overwork. Jeff, I do think he's been overworked in terms of what he's had to face. There's no doubt about that. And again, those numbers taken a big hit. Like Hellebuyck was at 920 again, looking like he was in his kind of Vezina form. And then kind of to your point, it looks like they probably skipped one of Brossoit's starts. I mean, Maurice said it out loud because of what happened. They skipped one of the starts when the schedule changed with the Canucks outbreak. Yeah. And after that, it's been tough. But that whole rest versus, again, I think that Brossoit has to play at least one more. I think there's a one back-to-back. He should be playing the one game against Vancouver for sure. Other than that, I think Hellebuck's going to want the games because he needs to work through some of the issues that we talked about.
Well, okay, here's the question.
I'm just saying, if you go only 3 starts, I just think right now they have no choice but to get Hellebuyck as sharp as possible.
I love you, Kenny, but I find it funny you go, well, I have him at 42 to 45 games, and that's great that that's the number you pegged him in, and he's ranging around there. I'm just suggesting when you look at every single other goalie in the NHL, and he's leading it at the top, and his last couple weeks have been progressively bad, these uncharacteristically getting pulled from games and not being the same Connor Hellebuyck that bounces back from goals, you have to think at this point in the season when you equate the most action and most shots to maybe being overworked. And maybe they should have realized early on, because Brossoit was playing well. I don't understand why they need to go with a Connor Hellebuyck hard riding schedule where they can't, when most teams that get to the playoffs kind of have that major support system in net. Maybe there's a reason to why you have to have those 2 goalies. And when you trust a guy like Brossoit and you don't use him, and you trust a goalie who self-admittedly would play 56 games this year, which we know no goalie should play 56 games, but Hellebuyck is not joking when he says that. That's his mindset. So maybe he needs to be reeled in, and maybe of all the worries they've had this season, Hellebuck's been the least of them. And now you look back and maybe he is playing too much hockey.
No, sorry. I think they should have given Brossoit a few more starts. What I'm saying is that I don't think that resting him, playing him in only 2 of the last 5 is going to help get Hellebuck rested. I mean, he had a 4-day break and then got pulled.
I think it's too late now.
Yeah. It's too late. It's too late for load management. What I'm saying is that the only way to get Hellebuck going is to play him now.
100%.
To play him in 4 out of the 5.
Which is part of the problem I think they paid themselves to, because he needs to play those games. And whether his workload is enough or not, it doesn't matter, because he needs to get in those games to find that rhythm. So he'll have to play through it. How is that going to look if the Jets actually do go on a deep playoff run? Because they've had to figure it out, if you will, this last 5-6 games, when in reality, if the Jets played better hockey, he's probably getting some nights off because they punched their ticket and it's no longer an issue. They've created an issue for themselves because they don't have a current spot in the standings right now.
I wonder about this, because it was riding Hellebuck that they rode him all the way to the Vezina Trophy last season, right? I always think on this, and Kenny, you'll be all over this because we're around the same era. You're a little bit younger, Hammy, but I think you'll probably get this entire thing. But I remember for a while it seemed like Martin Brodeur was a freak of nature, right? And he didn't look like he was the most in shape guy, but the guy could just play and play and play and play, and it seemed like he never broke down, right? I remember when Calgary brought in Mika Kiprasov, and he was just an absolute god in that town, and during that playoff run that they went on in I think it's 2004, 2004, and then it seemed to me, if I remember correctly, I went and looked at his numbers just got worse and worse every year after that. And I remembered what I determined from that, because they just played him, same thing. And what I determined from that was that no one is Martin Brodeur, right? He was just a freak of nature who could just last, and it didn't wear him down. But almost every other goaltender, when they tried to match Brodeur's numbers, because that's what he was playing at the time, and I think that they just thought that's what good goalies could get to, they just couldn't get there. But I wonder how much... I get what you're saying, Jeff, and I get that you're saying Paul Maurice needed to be the adult in the room and handle the kid, and hey, you can only have so much sugar kind of thing, right?
Yes and no. Just
let me finish the question, and then you can get at it. I just wonder. I mean, he rode him to a Vezina Trophy. Is it maybe if Connor Hellebuck is tired at this stage and has played too much hockey, is it just a bad time to discover that you can't ride him that much year after year after year, or that you thought maybe this guy was going to be that exception? He was going to be the next Marty Brodeur.
How soon we forget that it was a shortened season last year. But
so you're saying we would have seen a tail off at the end of the year from him?
I'm not saying anything. I can't predict the future. Like, hey, don't put those. Don't say that. I'm just saying we don't know. But I would say that I'm not pinning this on Maurice as quote unquote being the adult in the room and taking the sugar away from the kid, as in I think that Hellebuck has earned that trust based on his production in net. I'm just saying maybe he, with the change in, who knows what's going on with Connor Hellebuck this year? Who knows what's going on with a number of players this year with COVID and everything, how people are dealing with it, to kind of look at it and go, well, the travel's pretty nice. Yeah, well, what if you're a guy who needs to go do something social, or you need to have certain things? Like, there's a lot to the mental game that I think is thrown off here, and who knows if it's not getting to him. And now I'm not claiming that it is, but I can, something isn't working, something isn't going right there. It's not like Connor Hellebuck is he's not getting the support. He's certainly not getting the goal support to get the victories. His defense has been suspect as well, but he certainly has not been the goaltender we've seen him in the past. He's let in a fair amount of weak goals. His trademark earlier in the year, we were applauding him nonstop on his ability, that when he let that goal in from like the far blue line, I don't think he let another goal in that game. Right. It was like he shut the door down. He was capable of turning his mind off, and actually what he says post game was aligning with how he was playing in net. And now we don't see that. We see it, pouring on. We see him coming out and claiming he wants to be in net, in a way challenging the head coach's decision when he was garbage for that game. He gave them nothing. Like, some of those goals were, not on his fault, but most, like, he did not make the save. So yes, you can take the past and go, okay, we've seen him bounce back or not the issue. What we're seeing now with under the circumstances we're in, given his play and how different it's been from earlier in the season to now, I don't think it's a reach that to suggest as much. That's all.
I mean, Vasilevsky's, Kevin Weeks was on with us on Friday. He said Vasilevsky's the best goalie in the NHL right now, ahead of Hellebuck. Vasilevsky's got 39 starts. I mean, again, the biggest difference, he doesn't see as much quality of shots in those starts, right? So
absolutely. And
I'm just saying, I just think that a guy can play a lot and still not be overworked. I agree with you. I think that there were.
But he is being overworked. He's got the most shots in the NHL. So it's like if you go look at the shots on Vasilevsky, I bet you he's like 20th. Or playing the most games. Like he doesn't, and we've seen this with Hellebuck. We've seen them talk about, we've seen Maurice talk about, like if he's playing this game or this game, he'll say, last Tuesday he had an easy night. It was like a 24 save night or a 21 save night. He wasn't overworked. They have those conversations. So he has been overworked on a lot of nights based on his shots, based on the Jets defense and the style in the game. It's been there has not been a lot of defensive juggernauts on the Winnipeg Jets this year. He's been, and have we ever heard players say as much as this year and any other year, the words, we hung him out to dry?
Yeah.
We've said that a few times this year. So he has been, so I think all those things point to at least, again, like he could be fine and just be going through some other stuff, and that's, dulling his skills right now. But I can't help but to think that the reliance on him, the pressure on him, the fact that they needed him to be like that to get those wins, and now they're this deep in the season, he's played that many games, and now he's playing, this bad, you could say. I think there has to be a correlation to all the expectations and the play that he had leading up to this point.
Kenny, take us out of this show.
I'm good. I'm out of words.
You're done? Okay. All right. Well, then that's it for us. This was great chat room.
Yes.
Great stuff, Hammy. We put our time in. We put our hour in. We did okay here. Hey, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I was thinking it was going to get a little gnarly in here today. Like we've been a little worried about how the chat room would respond to the losing streak.
Today.
Super awesome. Great stuff, and helping drive the conversation and responsive to the stuff that's being said, and argumentative when you disagree with our points. And that's what we want. We don't want people coming in here just nodding their heads. We want people coming in challenging us.
I'm not broken. I'm just saving it for when I really need it. Playoffs are around the corner. I don't want to have fatigue when it really matters, people.
Yeah. But yeah, we just want to thank everyone for showing up. When's the next game, guys?
Wednesday night in Calgary. It's a late one, so get the
8:30 or 9.
Get your afternoon rest in.
There we go. But we want to thank you for showing up. We appreciate it, and we'll be back here doing the same thing next time. Clearly, we'll be doing the pregame. A lot of people, there have to be some people not aware, because I had the headband on in the pregame, and a lot of people weren't aware of it. But check out our pregame on Instagram, and you can check out our postgame right here where you're watching it now. If you haven't subscribed to us on YouTube, go check that out and do that. And we're going to pump the Friday show again, Ken, because we're so excited about it.
Yeah, big news. We got big news.
Christine Simpson is going to be on, and Ron McLean stopping in.
And they're must listens. If you're not subscribing to this show, go do that right now. And I'm sure that everyone on here is, but do that.
That's good stuff, Hammy. We appreciate that. Love having Hammy on. He's great. He's our brother. We love this. Thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will see you for the next game.